First certificate, reading and use of English paper, Part 5, multiple choice. The Silent Mountain. Standing at a height of almost 4,500 feet above sea level, the mountain overlooks a small village of scarcely 1,000 people. In between the village and the mountain, we find a hamlet made up of a DIY shop, a broken down cottage, a refurbished cottage, and a church with a graveyard. In the refurbished cottage lives a man who goes by the name Lion, although his real name is John. John is 52 years old and runs a petrol station in the village. Working 6 days a week, he travels 5 miles to get there and another 5 to get back. Even though his business revolves around selling petrol, he barely uses this particular type of fuel. He cycles to work and only uses his motorbike sparingly. The cottage has been in the possession of his family for 6 generations. It was made from slate taken from the sides of the mountain by his ancestors. On long winter nights, after finishing chopping wood, John tells his grandson tales by the slate chimney. On one occasion, he told a tale that involved what supposedly happened to his great-grandmother one evening when she went out mushroom picking in the mountain. One summer solstice, his great-grandmother Mary had almost filled her basket full of mushrooms. She had worked hard at it, with the sun beating on her through the cloudless sky. As she crouched down to get another one, she heard an otherworldly shriek coming from the mountain peak. Once every 3 seconds or so, she could feel a strong force that traveled through the air, seemingly bending the top of the trees backwards at every pulse. The birds began to fly away, and the mountain goats proceeded to run off as fast as their limbs allowed. However, Mary stood there in shock as her basket fell to the ground, leaving only a handful of mushrooms in it. Mary's face went pale as she saw a creature 30 times her size straight ahead toward her at neck-breaking speed. Mary remained motionless as she heard the gigantic beast as big as a dinosaur utter the words, "My lair has been desecrated." The golden glow emanating from its body almost blinded her. She became lost for words and unable to make head or tail as to what she was witnessing. "I come from a far-away land in search of the one who stole my crown," it said, as its head rocked from side to side in eager expectation of a response. The poor woman couldn't take the experience and plummeted to the ground. John's great-grandfather, Jonathan, found her early the next morning, guided by his trusted dog that picked up her scent. She explained what had happened, but Jonathan saw no signs of anything she had said having occurred. He tried to convince her that she must have dreamt it. She may have suffered from heat stroke. Mary, still awe-stricken, was unable to speak too much. After having slept 12 hours straight, she insisted on her story, yet hardly any of the villagers believed her. She went back to her normal life. The grandson looked entertained as he heard his granddad tell this tale and had no trouble sleeping that night. The next morning, John decided to go for a hike in the mountain to clear his mind. He decided to follow a trail that was overgrown with weeds, that was new to him. It was flanked by a 10-foot drop on one side. To his surprise, he found a cave and decided to go inside. His jaw dropped as he saw an enormous glimmering crown in front of his eyes. We can look at the questions. John A. works in a petrol station in a hamlet. B. has a DIY shop. C. rides his motorbike often. D has entered middle age. 2. What can be said about John's cottage? A. It is made from local rocks. B. It is in bad condition and needs work doing to it. C. It has had a possession for a long time. D. It is side to side with the cemetery. 3. What do we learn about Mary in the fourth paragraph? A. She can hear a wide range of sounds. B. She greatly enjoyed working in the sun. C. She was overwhelmed by what she was experiencing. D. She intentionally let her basket drop. 4. How would you describe the creature's behavior towards Mary? A. It managed to effectively communicate with her. B. It didn't seem to understand what impact its presence could have on her. C. It was overly meek. D. Its calibration was on point. 5. How did Jonathan react to Mary's account of events? A. He believed she was telling the truth. B. He thought some of the lesser details may have been distorted. C. He dismissed her account as a product of her imagination. D. He went to the village to tell people what had happened. 6. Why did John go up the mountain? A. To gain clarity of thought. B. To pick mushrooms. C. To meditate. Or D. To cut some weeds. The first one. 1. The answer we have D. Has entered middle age. We see in the second paragraph, highlighted in green, John is 52 years old. He has thus entered middle age. The second, what can be said about John's cottage? A. It is made from local rocks. So third paragraph, highlighted in green, it was made from slate. Okay, so we call slate a type of rock that you often found in mountainous areas. 3. What do we learn about Mary in the fourth paragraph? Okay, she was overwhelmed by what she was experiencing. C. Fourth paragraph highlighted in green, it says, however, Mary stood there in shock as her basket fell to the ground, leaving only a handful of mushrooms in it. Mary's face went pale. So, C, she was overwhelmed. Overwhelmed means that you can't really cope properly with a certain experience you're having. Okay, 4. How would you describe the creature's behavior towards Mary? Okay, B. It didn't seem to understand what impact its presence could have on her. The whole of the fifth paragraph sums this up. 5. How did Jonathan react to Mary's account of events? C. He dismissed her account as a product of her imagination. So there it says, he tried to convince her that she must have dreamt it. She may have suffered from heat stroke. I don't know if you know what heat stroke is. Basically, when it's very, very hot outside, sometimes people feel faint, sometimes they feel really bad, and they can even get to die. Okay. The last one, number 6. Why did John go up the mountain? A. To gain clarity of thought. It says John decided to go for a hike in the mountain to clear his mind.